Welcome to Strategy Speaks, the official podcast for the Center for Security, Diplomacy and Strategy at the Vrije Universiteit Brussels. I am your host, Daniel Fiott, and for this 21st episode of Strategy Speaks, I'm pleased to welcome Eva Pejsova and Céline Pajon for a discussion on the recent elections in Japan, the landslide election victory of Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, and the implications for Europe. Eva is currently the Japan chair at CSDS, and Céline heads Japan and Indo-Pacific research at the think tank, the French Institute for International Relations, IFRI, as well as being an associate fellow at CSDS. Welcome to Strategy Speaks, Eva and Céline. Eva, I would like to start with you by asking what your general impressions of the recent landslide election victory in Japan are, and what this actually tells us about Japan and the country moving forward.
Thanks, Daniel, for the invitation. I think we're witnessing exciting times in Japanese politics. I guess it's completely fair to say that this is the sort of elections that will enter history books. So we've heard it before. It is the first time that a single party, so the LDP, won what we call a supermajority. So 2/3 of the seats of the lower house, 316 seats of the 465 seat chamber. It is pretty unbelievable when we just look at the 2024 general elections results, when they got something like 190 seats. And maintained extremely low approval ratings, below 30% ever since. We've seen these divisions among the different factions, corruption scandals, and frankly, this political disunity was one of the major weaknesses of Japan over the past couple of years, and an obstacle to kind of push forward with the policies that Japan needs to push forward with. So a big success for LDP, a big success for Prime Minister Takaichi herself. Now, what does it really tell us about Japan? I guess we reached a turning point. We see a Japan that is ready, that is eager to move on. There is this new sense of dynamism within the society, and a newfound hope in its leadership, which is refreshing and much needed. And it clearly comes with this realization of the society, of the many pressing and really serious challenges that Japan is facing at home on the economic front and abroad, mostly related to the security situation. Now, I personally find extremely encouraging the sort of societal change that we're seeing with this impressive turnout of young voters to the polls. This group of 20, 30-year-olds that we've always considered as being too self-absorbed, disenchanted, and not interested in public life, that suddenly votes for LDP, which is a conservative party. I see a big hope, maybe I'm too hopeful, for the empowerment of women who see in the new first female prime minister an inspiration. There will be a lot of female LDP candidates in different districts, so perhaps also a bit of a refreshing news on that front, 15 to 20% of seats. So I think that's something that really needs to be bear in mind. But what needs to be reminded as well is frankly that this election is mostly related. The success is related to the personality of Prime Minister Takaichi herself, perhaps more than the policies. Clearly, she is a very non-traditional Japanese leader. We've seen the unconventional diplomatic style. That's one thing, but she also comes from a very humble family, which contrasts with this series of Japanese leaders who have always had this long political pedigrees. People appreciate the frankness, the courage. We've seen how outspoken she was with regard to Taiwan, how bold she can be with China. And frankly, it took a lot of courage to also call for this snap election. So it is a ticket of trust. It is a ticket of hope. But the hardest is to come, and here comes the not really the surprise, because as much as the personality is what guaranteed this victory, the coalition will be judged on the implementation of the policy. So the high mandate means also extremely high expectations. the power of the LDP and the coalition is virtually limitless, but the list of tasks is extremely long. Both short-term, as I said, to redress the economy with some of the short-term punchy measures that need to be taken, and of course making sure that these are sustainable in the long term. So overall, great news, but a lot of pressure ahead.
Thanks so much, Eva, for that deep dive into the election results and also the context behind it. I think it's very interesting what you were saying about the different dynamics at play within Japanese society and also what is motivating voters and their thinking as well. I also underline a very important point as well, which you made, which is not only that the Prime Minister is female and obviously has a lot of backing, but as you rightfully said, we're also seemingly in an era where unconventional politicians tend to do very, very well in the polls. And you pointed to many, many reasons why that would be the case. But I think you also ended with a very important point as well, which is that, you know, anyone winning a landslide election has huge expectations on their shoulders. So delivery is absolutely key. Thanks for that, Eva. And Céline, I want to turn to you because obviously you're following Japan very, very closely as well. So I want to give you the opportunity, firstly, to also give your impressions on the election results, but also maybe pushing you a bit more, not necessarily on the internal dynamics, but also how partners around the region and the world are also seeing these elections. What are the kind of early reactions from Japan's partners in all of this?
Thank you, Daniel, for the invitation. Thank you for having me. Indeed, I would like to double down on what Eva just said about the historical victory of the LDP and indeed the personality of Sanae Takaichi, which is a very iconoclast. By the Japanese standard, really help this victory. I think she was very good to attract both the youngsters, as if I explained, but also the more older conservative kind of voters. We know that she's kind of she is following the legacy of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. She has a very kind of high expectation for the country. She wants Japan that is strong. That was our motto during the campaign. So Japan's back, doubling down also on the defense military normalizations and playing ambitious role also in diplomacy. So for this reason, I think that overall, the result of the election was very well received abroad by Japan's partner. Of course, Donald Trump, President Trump, provided a very strong endorsement of Takaichi, be it before the election, but also afterwards. He provided very warm congratulations. And actually, Trump was visiting Tokyo only a few days after Takaichi came into power last autumn, and the visit was very successful. Takaichi was very skillful to actually provide Trump with the necessary flattery and so on to reassure him and try to get a very strong and special personal relation with Trump. And so Trump is also quite has this kind of high expectation also about what Takaichi can achieve in terms of defense capacity and also high investment in the US. So that explains this endorsement. We've got also a very positive reaction from our key and President Lee Jae-myung also visited Japan quite recently. And this was very good way for Takaichi to show that she is quite known for her kind of nationalist convictions, but she can also be very much pragmatic. And she really bet on this relation and this rapprochement with South Korea that we've seen actually in place since 2023. And we've seen also very good communication skill at that time with Takaichi and Lee Jae-myung playing the battery drum together. So to really actually demonstrate the kind of strategic intimacy between the two. So we are expecting more to come on this also particular relation. More generally, I think the overall reactions around the world were very positive also, because that means that we have a strong leader in Japan, that the governmental stability is back. Actually, since the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe stepped back in 2020, there have been a lot of instability, and she's actually the fourth Prime Minister since then. So I think all the partners need a strong Japan and a reliable Japan. And I would make, of course, a specific note on the reaction by China, which was not so positive. And as you know, there was an open crisis with China following Takaichi's remarks in the Japanese Diet back in November. So the relationship has been very tense. So obviously that's not a very good news for Beijing.
Yeah, thanks, Céline. That's also very interesting. Again, you stressed, like Eva did, the importance of charisma and the charisma of Prime Minister Takaichi, and how that may have also helped her bilateral relations with President Trump, who we also know is a president invested in the idea of charisma as well. And I think you also gave us a very good kind of overview of how partners in general have reacted to Japan. And you mentioned in particular the word stability, which I think is of critical importance, especially in the case of Japan as well. Also, given what you said about somehow, the shadow of Shinzo Abe being always there in the recent past of history. You also used the line "Japan is back" as well. And you touched, I think, very interestingly on this US and also the China dimension. And if I may actually push you a bit on this, or ask you directly about how you see Japan's relationship within that broader context, which is framing security in the Indo-Pacific between the US and China on the one hand. And I wonder also on that basis whether or not you could say something about how you think this election victory is going to influence or affect Japan's broader strategy, and also in particular its defense policy, because you mentioned that a few times as well already.
Yes, Daniel, indeed. I think defense will be one of the key issue, and key issue on which the Prime Minister will work. Actually, when we look at the campaign during the election, foreign policy and defense were not front and center. Most of the talking debate was about economy and purchasing power of the Japanese population and so on. But as I mentioned, what we've seen in the first 100 days of Takaichi mandate was a big diplomatic crisis, or even more with China. So I would like to say some word about it. I think it's quite important. So this date back from November. At that time, Takaichi was in Diet, and she made a statement saying that the naval blockade in the Taiwan Strait would be amount to a threat to Japan survival and could justify the military intervention or military support from Japan to the US forces if they were to act. So as you see, it's very kind of cautious statement, but even though, and it does not amount to a strategic line change from the Japanese government. It's actually a scenario that was discussed, but maybe behind the curtain. So the fact that the one official prime minister explained that so openly in a public audience was quite impressive and actually caused China to react, and China took a kind of pretext of this remark to accuse Japan to break the status quo and to try to actually support Taiwan independence. So what we saw afterwards is that China took a lot of retaliation measures with public condemnations, embargo on the Japanese seafood, discouraged strongly the tourism from China to Japan and so on. And early this year decided some restriction on dual-use technology as well as rare earths, etc. So very strong pressure from China on Japan. But even though what we saw is the Prime Minister Takaichi staying really strong and not giving in, and with support also from the public opinion. So that's also nurturing what we were saying about this longing for hope and having a kind of real vision for Japan to stand out. So what I would like also to highlight is that this strategy by China was actually turned out as a big failure and very counterproductive for Beijing. So it led to a big victory by the LDP and the strengthening of Takaichi. It did not harm so much the Japanese economy. So far, we see only symbolic moves, actually. And finally, well, China was very proactive to try to convey a narrative of a revival of aggressive militarism from Japan. And this kind of narrative really failed to convince the partners in the region, in Asia or in Europe, or even in the UN. The Beijing actually sent a letter to the UN Secretary General to complain about Japan and how Japan was turning. So what we might see as next step, my guess is that well, this kind of test of Takaichi failed, and so I think that the relations we might see the relation appeasing quite a bit in the next months. At least that's my hope. You also mentioned, of course, the relationship with Trump and the US alliance, which is quite vital for Japan. So that's also one of the priority of Takaichi. I think that she will try to manage Trump by, nurturing a very close relations, but also strengthening the alliance, the security integrations between the US forces and the Japanese forces, and also reinforce the links of interdependence between the US and Japan, also in the economic sector and investment. So the overall objective is really to appear as being an indispensable ally for the US, so that it can actually rely on the US extended deterrence, and also to be at some point protected against some kind of typical unilateral move by the Trump administration. One aspect that is very positive for the alliance is the focus that and the effort that Takaichi will put on the defense sector. So she already explains that she will accelerate the path to invest in the defense. So she will move from now 2% already, almost 2% of the GDP to the defense sector, up to 3.5% or more. And she really would like also the domestic Japanese defense industry to benefit from that. So for a long time, this defense equipment was bought from the US, but we've seen some kind of relaxation of legal constraints for 10 years or so, which now allows the Japanese defense industry to grow up and to export equipment and technology. And so the idea of Takaichi is to invest in defense not only for its own protection, national protection of Japan, but also to nurture the alliance with the US, the strategic partnership with some partners like UK and Italy. You can think about this project of next generation fighter jet, for example, so jointly developing some capacity. But also as a way to actually pull economic growth in Japan. So now the defense sector is actually identified as one of the strategic domain in which the Japanese government will invest to ensure growth and economic security.
Thanks, Céline. That's super interesting because it combines, of course, not only, as you rightfully said, Japan's evolving defense strategy more generally, but also the kind of combination of defense policy and the defense industrial questions with the broader point about economic competitiveness that both you and Eva actually mentioned as being one of the core elements as well within the election. So again, pointing to this point about expectations after the election, one of them will be, I guess, this point about delivering on the economy in particular. And I think what you did was, in your response, was really interesting as well in placing that, let's say, national strategy within Japan in the context of its relations with the US and China. And I think you gave a very good expose of some of the tensions and possibilities there, especially in the context of China and maybe moves now to try and diffuse some of the earlier frictions now that the election has passed. So thanks for that overview, Céline. And Eva, that actually gives me a really nice segue back to you, because I think one of the things that we've missed so far in our discussion is also how the elections are going to impact on European security and questions about the Europe-Japan relationship as well. So I want to turn to you about the European dimension in particular. And I'm reminded here that, Prime Minister Takaichi, when she first came to office, was quite open and quite proactive in terms of the ties that Japan was supposed to build with NATO and the European Union. And I also think that it's kind of open and common knowledge that there was a lot of positive signaling on Japan's kind of contribution to Ukraine as well, and some I would say reassuring language on Japan's position in the context of that war as well. So I guess my question to you, Eva, to round off our episode is, how do you expect the kind of Japan-Europe relationship now to evolve after this election, especially with such a strong mandate for the Prime Minister?
Well, I think it's interesting and perhaps important to note that when it comes to foreign policy and security policy, frankly, there's a lot of continuity already since the Abe era. So yes, we know that the new prime minister is often kind of associated to Prime Minister Abe Shinzo, but throughout the Kishida and the Ishibe administration, the European focus and the kind of overall trajectory of Japan in trying to diversify its partnership and boost its alliance with the United States has always been there. So it's basically a steady course forward. There is this constant reminder and understanding that the Indo-Pacific and the Euro-Atlantic security are deeply interconnected, if not inseparable. And you mentioned Ukraine. Ukraine is definitely part of this logic. Ukraine is one of the priorities for Japan, who sees the alignment between Russia and China and this, other, the Krink axis, the China, Russia, North Korea, Iran axis as the greatest threat to the global rules-based order, and who wants to push for this, united democratic front. And in that context, cooperation with Europe and NATO, be it EU member states or NATO, is really an integral part of Japan's security posturing. So going ahead, that's not going to wane. Of course, it's just going to be injected with more energy and more power, more concrete. If we break it down, well, of course, we will see more emphasis on security defense, on defense industrial cooperation, with all the tools and means that Japan is now ready to give to its own industry that Céline already mentioned. If we look at the EU level, let us recall the security defense partnership that was signed in the end of 2024, which has this defense industrial cooperation as one of the newer items on the agenda. We are preparing to see a first EU-Japan defense industrial dialogue, which is scheduled for this spring. So hopefully, again, both partners building up their own can do more together. I think there will be more progress also on the economic security front. Let's remember that Takaichi was the economic security minister before becoming prime minister. So this is an agenda that is very dear to her heart. And again, a lot of potential, a lot of progress already with the competitive alliance, the critical material alliance, supply chain security, you name it. And to kind of, square the circle, technology innovation. So when it comes to the EU, of course, the expectations need to be adjusted. So we're talking more about dual use, niche dual use, and emerging disruptive technologies, AI, quantum. Outer space and critical infrastructure would be the kind of lowest hanging fruit, but of course very high in terms of impact and common interest. So I won't go into the details of all the plans that are currently on the table. We often in Europe speak about this potential within the Horizon Europe projects when it comes to research and development, etc. So it remains to be seen. NATO, again, Japan is the only IP4 country that has now a mission, a fully fledged diplomatic mission to NATO in Brussels since last year, with an ambassador and a staff working round the clock to, fulfill the agenda of the ITPP. And again, the defense industrial file is very, very high up, with lots of matchmaking events, hoping to provide some tissue into the political frameworks that have been agreed. Now, there are challenges, balancing for Japan with the US competition in a way is going to be one of the challenge. Addressing some of the remaining domestic legal institutional issues is another one. Yes, we're dealing with slow, complex bureaucracies, so it always takes time. But I would say that time is not really on our side in this case, especially when it comes to balancing with the US priorities. So it is in both interests, and here the Europeans need to do their homework too, to try to deliver something concrete rather fast, to prove our electorates that this is a relationship that is worth investing in, and that will pay off in the midterm, hopefully, not too long term. So a lot of challenges, but important not to lose the momentum, because the momentum is really now.
Yeah, thanks for that, Eva. I think that's a very important point to end on in this idea of somehow running out of time as a partnership, but also building on the momentum. And I think also your point about the relative consistency in the Japanese approach towards Europe is also really useful as well. I think also for Europeans who are going through their own, let's say, transformations. And indeed, I think another point that you mentioned, which is also relevant for our audience, is also the way in which Japan's own defense transformation, which I know that you and Céline have both written about and thought about, is also having a big impact on how Japan sees Europe as well. And you mentioned some of the potential opportunities that could be seized. So we're here now at the end of the episode, and obviously in the wake of a kind of landslide victory in Japan. But I'm very happy that both you, Eva, and Céline have helped us kind of unpack a little bit, first of all, the context in which the landslide victory was achieved, but then also helping us understand a bit more of the wider implications of that election, both for partners in the Indo-Pacific, but also Europe more generally. So thanks for joining us for this 21st episode of Strategy Speaks. Please stay tuned for our next episode as well. Thanks, Eva. Thanks, Céline.